And we're up. All right, everybody. Welcome. We're going to do a quick one on designing lower thirds for your video projects or live stream projects. Let me just move one more window here and I'll explain a little bit more about what we're going to do. All right, so first and foremost, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Terry White, Worldwide Design and Photography Evangelist for Adobe. I do regular live streaming on the Adobe properties. So right now I'm streaming on the CC Design page on Facebook, Creative Cloud Design. You can find that page at Adobe CC Design. And of course, if you like the page, then you'll be notified the next time a stream is going to go live here. I also stream on the regular Creative Cloud Facebook page, YouTube channel, and Lightroom, InDesign, the student channel, and a few more. So just follow all the Adobe products that you're interested in on Facebook, and of course, you'll always know when there are going to be live streams available. I see Renee's in the house. Hello, Victoria. How's everybody? And welcome. So let's go ahead and get started with the topic at hand. So what's a lower third? Lower thirds are usually, you see them on TV, especially news programs all the time. As a matter of fact, you see them on our live streams all the time too. That's this stuff down here that, over here, is giving information about the topic or the speaker or, you know, in this case, the branding of the channel and what's going on. So basically what that's intended to do is to prevent, or not prevent, but make it so you don't have to do what I just did. I shouldn't have to introduce myself because my information is down there. You already can see my name. You can already see my title. You can even see my Twitter handle. You know you're on a Creative Cloud channel. So that's the purpose of a lower third, is just save that time so speakers don't have to necessarily introduce themselves, give their name, or give their info. In lower thirds, there's no rule or, you know, there's no set rule that you have to design it a certain way. You can make your lower third look any way you want. You can make it, depending on how you're broadcasting, you can either make it so it comes on screen for a few seconds, maybe at the beginning, and then goes off so it's not distracting, or in our case, we kind of leave them up the entire time because people come and go. So that is, again, totally up to you in the broadcasting environment that you're going to be using to do your live stream or your live video or your video. Usually if I'm doing a recording though, because I do expect people to watch that recording from the beginning. On a recording, in my screen recording software, I normally edit that in after the fact and then have it show for 15 seconds and then have it disappear because there's no reason that it needs to stay up the entire time. But like I said, for a live stream, we usually keep them up because people come and go. All right. I was going to show you another example. So let me show you a lower third that I used to use. As a matter of fact, I can bring it up right here in the broadcasting software. Or maybe I can't. I don't know. Oh, that's weird. I made a change to it, and now it's not coming up. Let's see, does that one still work? That part of it still works. But for whatever reason, I'm not getting the other part. Okay, well, I guess I'll have to show it to you another way. I was going to show you, let me try one more thing. Yeah, it's like it's not there anymore. All right, let me go grab it and import it back in. The problem is I made a change to it, so it may not have come back over to the streaming computer. Let's see if I can go find it real quick. If not, we will move on without it because I do have it in Photoshop anyway. All right, and if we go there and we go there, I'm just trying to get to the folder it's in. It's in that folder. Oh, wrong keyboard. Nope. There's one piece of it that's missing. And that's right, it did not come over to this computer, so that's why we don't see it. All right, I'll fix that later. In the meantime, I'll go back to my existing lower third, and I'll just show it to you and show you an example of it. All right, let's go and turn that back off. Okay. All right, so forget, I was going to try and show it to you live, but I'll just show it to you in Photoshop. All right, so let's switch over to my computer, and that way I'll be able to show it to you on the computer itself. So I'm on my computer now, I'm in Photoshop now. That becomes the next question. Do you have to design it in Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever? There's no particular set program you have to do them in. I like to do them in Photoshop because I think Photoshop's a little easier to design them in or use them in, because you can start off right off the bat with a transparent background. You can do all kinds of effects and filters. You can get it looking the way you want. Although there are some advantages to doing them in Illustrator because you have more drawing tools and more vector capabilities. So you can use either one. You can use them together. Like I said, I typically do them in Photoshop, but it doesn't have to be Photoshop. It can easily be Illustrator as well. But today we're going to do it in Photoshop. So I'm going to go up to my File menu. I'm going to open up the one that I was trying to show you a minute ago. And this is the one I was trying to show you. Now, the one thing you can see is that, again, it just takes up the lower part of the screen here. It's got, and you can see behind me there, it's got Adobe Worldwide Design and Photography Evangelist Terry White. It's got the channel that I would normally be streaming on. It's got the logo for the application I'd be talking about. And of course, it says the word live, which that's kind of redundant. You can pretty much not do that if you don't want to. Let me look at one thing real quick and see if I can figure out why it did not come over. And maybe I just didn't give it enough time, but it did not come over to the other system. That's the one that should have come over. For whatever reason, that did not pop over to the streaming computer. But anyway, this is what the lower third looks like. You can make this anything you want. This one goes all the way across the screen. It could be something small just next to the person or under the person. Again, completely up to you. So we're going to see how to do this from scratch, and then you can take it from there. All right, so I'm going to close this one. Now that we kind of know what they look like when they're finished. Let me save that one last time. And now that this one is closed, I just want to check one thing real quick. Aha, I got it to work. All right, so I just wanted to check it there. All right, and I brought this one up so now that you can see it. So apparently the last time I had opened it, I hadn't saved it so that it could generate out to the streaming computer. So just on a fly, I was able to flip over and switch to that lower third. Did you see? So you can actually see it live here and show what it looks like. All right, so that was just to show you. All right, now let's go back and actually do one. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this one and go back to the original one, and we'll do one from scratch. All right, so I'm in Photoshop. What do you need to do as far as the document? How do you make a document that's even going to be a lower third? So when you're going to make your document, it's best to think in the size of the video, because that will help you design it to be the right size. You can design it piece by piece, and depending on the software or streaming software or video software that you're editing it into, you can bring into pieces. But I like to design it with the frame size of the video in mind, so that way I know it will be perfectly fitting whatever video, or in this case live stream, I'm going to use it on. So I'm going to go up to my File menu and come down to New. When I come down to New, I get the option to, of course, use an existing template that I've used before, or a preset size that I've used before, or my last basically recent document sizes I've worked on. Of course, I can go into the various templates and do them. If I go to Film and Video, there are some Film and Video title graphics, and there is a sports lower third set. So you even have a template to begin with here, and there's one for events. So you even have a couple of templates to work from. I hadn't even looked at these yet. So you have templates to choose that are free to use, that are part of Adobe stock, and they're our gift to you as a Photoshop CC member. But we're going to do ours from scratch. So I'm just going to go back to recent, and I'm going to go to Film and Video, but I'm going to use the blank document presets at the top. Now you'll notice that there's one for 1080p, which is 1920 by 1080. There's one for 720p, which is 1280, and these are pixel sizes by 720, so forth and so on. If you want to see more, you can say, show me more, and that's where you get into the Ultra HD, 4K ones, so forth and so on. So there are tons of presets already here for just about any size video you'd be working on. Since the bulk of what I do right now is still 1080p, it's not 4K yet, I'm going to start with the 4K one. However, there's one thing we're going to change on the default that I don't like. If we leave it the way it is, it'll be 1920 by 1080 pixels wide at 72 pixels per inch, great, RGB, 8-bit, fantastic, but it will come in with a white background. And that white background is absolutely unnecessary. We don't need this white background, so why have it? So I'm going to switch the white background, scroll down, and switch it to transparent. I don't want it to come in with any background at all. Just come in with the right size window and be transparent. That way, when I build my lower third, I won't have to get rid of that white background later because I won't ever need it. All right, so let's go ahead, and I'm not sure even why they come in with a white background, but let's go ahead and create this one. And as I said, it comes in completely transparent the way it's supposed to. Now, the other thing you'll notice is that it comes in also with guides. These guides are technically referred to as the inside, inside the guides is the title safe area. And this goes all the way back to broadcast TV. Remember when screens weren't flat? Remember when they kind of rounded off the edges a little bit? What these guides were designed for is so that you didn't put something so close to the edge of the screen that it might get cut off depending on the rounded TV or rounded thing. That's no longer a thing. We don't really have to, I can't remember the last time I put something on the edge and it got cut off. We really don't have to worry about that anymore. So technically, we don't really need these guides anymore either. We don't need the white background. We don't really need these title safe guides. If you're still working in some kind of weird broadcast environment where you need them, they're there. But for our purpose, for most digital things we're going to be doing, live streaming and videos, we don't really need those guides. So I'm going to go up to my, where am I? I'm going to go up to my view menu. There we go. Under my view menu, I'm going to choose clear guides. Took me a minute to remember where that was. All right, so clear guides, they're gone. And so now we're just there with blank layer 1 and nothing on it. No guides, no white background. Now we can begin. So what do we want our lower third to have? So start thinking about that. I would think you'd want a name, a title, maybe a logo. So let's stick to those three things. And we'll do one more, maybe a Twitter handle as well, or some kind of social media handle. So let's say we're going to put those 4 things in our lower third. So, well, can we just type on the screen? Yes. But the problem with just typing type on the screen is, as you can see, if this lower third, which is down below me right now, it would be okay if it was just the white type because I'm wearing a dark shirt. I'm on a Photoshop background, which is dark, so you'd still see the type. But notice that the white type on the lower third we're looking at right now is on a black background. That's because we always want to be able to see that lower third no matter what's going on behind it. So in most cases, you'll see a lower third on TV or in video on top of some type of color, whether it's a shape, a rectangle, a logo, or whatever. You're usually going to see the lower third on something, the title on something. So we have to build that something that it's going to be on. So I'm going to go ahead and create another blank layer. And you can build those shapes any way you want. You can build them as selections that you fill in. You can build them with the shape tools that are built into Photoshop. There's a rectangle tool, rounded rectangle, an ellipse tool, a polygon tool, a line tool, and a custom shape tool. So for example, let's say I use the custom shape tool, and I can drag out a custom shape, and that will give me the shape. Where do I get the shapes from? I get them from there. So you can, again, use whatever shape you want and fill that in. All right, so I just wanted to show you that. We're not really going to do it. All right, so one more. Let's create one more new layer. And now we're going to go in and we're going to go back to, let's say, a rectangle. Now, if we go to the rectangle, depending on your default, that will create in my case, it's going to create a shape layer. And that shape layer is right now filled with nothing with a red stroke. So I'm going to fill it with a color. Let's use a nice bright red color. And we're going to say that it has no stroke. We don't really need a stroke around it. So now that gives me a rectangle to put something on. All right, great. Now, normally, lower thirds are built in terms of priority, meaning you'll see a shape, and then you'll see another shape containing other information, and another shape containing maybe the third or fourth piece of information, or third and fourth piece of information combined. So like the person's name is usually the biggest thing we'll see, or the subject is the biggest thing we'll see. And then you'll see a smaller like subhead or title or something under it. Usually that something under it, again, it's not a law, it's not a rule, is in another shape, another color, another whatever. So you can build it all in one if you want, or you can build them separately. It's totally up to you. So in this case, for example, let's say that I wanted to build that first shape, and then we're going to build a second one. And because I'm using shape layers, they will automatically create new layers. If I were building this with selections, then I'd probably want to go in and make a new layer for each selection. All right, so now I can change the color of that. If I don't want it to be the same color, I can, of course, make it a different color. So let's go and make that a nice gray. All right, so now we've got our red and our gray, and then, of course, we can keep going, or we can say, well, we really only need two shapes for this, and then maybe the logo. All right, so now, what do we want to do next? I might want to either offset those shapes, like so, or line them up. Again, this is your design. It's however you want it to look. I'm going to offset it a little bit. And maybe on this first shape, the red one, I'm actually going to extend it out further a little bit more to the left. Okay, so now we got that in place. So now the next thing becomes, and maybe I want to bring the gray one down a bit. Next thing becomes, well, let's start putting some text on it. So when you grab your type tool and you type, that's automatically going to generate a new layer anyway. So we can click and we can say that this is going to be Terry White. All right, so I've got my, and it's already blocking, I'm already blocking it with my head. Hold on, let's zoom in a little bit. Let's enter that. And then let's move that up so you can see it. Okay. So now you can see it. And the name. Now, when you type, what font should you use? Should you use upper and lower case? Should you use all caps? I'm going to give you, these are, again, just suggestions. I'm going to say that for your type, you definitely want to use something bold, heavy, or thick. Thin type is just hard to see on video. You got to remember, sometimes people may be watching this on something as small as a phone screen. So your video is going to be very small, so therefore your type is going to be very thin if you make it thin type. So I tend to want to use sans serif fonts. I tend to want to make them bold or heavy, so you can go up to Photoshop right now, and you can either type in bold, sans serif, or sans serif, and then find your sans serif fonts, and then find your bold ones of it, or just bold. You can also find things like heavy. So that will show me my heavy fonts that I have. So for example, I could go in and say, oh, that's even better. F for heavy or Fat Frank. Those are Typekit fonts that you can get from your Typekit part of your membership. And now that's a nice thick font, easy to read. All right, so next we're going to come down and do one more. We're going to say Adobe Evangelist. And we'll do a Twitter handle at Terry L. White. All right, so we're going to make that one a little smaller since we made the line longer. And we're going to space that out a bit. And now we've got that in place. And again, your font choices are totally up to you. So now, what's next? What might be next would be a logo, or maybe something more about the person, their title, whatever. But pretty much you don't want to write a paragraph here. You want to keep these kind of shortened to the point. So Terry White, Adobe Evangelist, @ White. So now the only thing I might want to put in is some graphics to go with it. So for example, if I go to my, let's bring out my Adobe library here. And if I go, I've got my logo. So for example, I could bring out my Terry White logo and put that in place. And since that's already white, it would look good on the red. So that's one way to do a logo. I also have, I believe if I go to my Adobe brand library, I've got some Adobe logos, of course, for each of the products. Let's go find the one for Photoshop, which is in the More area. There it is. Okay, so I can pull that one out. And of course, we don't want to load this up with too many. We're just going to use one, probably just one. And it's okay if that straddles the two boxes there. That's a design choice. All right, so now we can move this one over and maybe put that right there. Okay, so we've got, actually we'll probably line it up on the end of that. Okay, so now we got that in place. What's next? At this point, it is literally up to you to continue designing. So for example, one of the things I like to do with my lower thirds is either use gradients to kind of make them look a little bit more 3D-ish, or I'll use masking, feathered masks, to kind of fade them out, because this will be on top of whatever the video is. So if it were on top of my shirt, I can have it fade out to the black in my shirt, or fade out to whatever color is behind it. And so let's do one of each. So for example, for that red rectangle, now because that's a shape layer, right now I can only fill that with a color. So I'm going to rasterize that layer. It doesn't really need to remain a shape layer at this point. We can go and say that we want to rasterize the layer just with a right click. So now it's a pixel layer. I can do whatever I want. And that means I can go to my gradient tool. And in my gradient tool, you'll find your default gradients. Now, there's a really nice one here, this bronze one that I like. I don't like the color right now, but I really like the way the gradient looks. I'll show you. Now, when I apply that, I don't want it to apply to the whole document. I just want to apply it to what's red. So what I'm going to do is lock the transparency of that layer in the Layers panel. That way, if I lock the transparency, it won't apply it to anything else other than what's already there. So for example, if I pull that down from the top right now to the bottom of the red, it will just apply it to the red because the rest of the layer transparency is locked. So see what I mean? How it gives that rounded look to it, that nice effect. Problem is it's the wrong color. So we can go back to that gradient, double click on it, and get right back to what defines that gradient. So it's a dark brown swatch, a light beige swatch, a dark brown swatch, a light beige swatch. So guess what? We can click on that. We can go to color. Actually, we can go to the color picker. There we go. And we can say that we want that to be red, and that will give us a nice red. Now we can go back to this one, go to the color picker, and we can say that, again, we want to go to the reds, and maybe we want that to be a lighter shade of red. Very light, actually. More like so. Click OK. Same thing here. Go back to the red. And you can use your swatches, of course, to make this go faster. And go back to this one, and this is like barely beige at all. And now it's barely red at all. Okay. So now we made and we clicked new to save it as a swatch. We've made a new swatch. That's the color we really wanted. We've still got the transparency locked, so now we can apply our new gradient to that area. Ew, I don't like it. It doesn't look as cool as the other one. All right, hold on, let's go fix one thing. I think I know why. I think it's this that's throwing me off. Let's go back to this one for a minute. Okay, I see where it is now. Let me try that one more time. Let's go back to this one. Yeah, it needs to be up there. There we go. More like that. All right, and we'll make a new one of that. That's better. I can already see it's better. There we go. And maybe even a little too light. So we can play around with the position of that. Or go back and adjust our gradient so it's not quite as light. I think we'll need to do that one last time. We can go fix this one. Maybe make it a little darker. Try it one last time. There we go. All right, so not bad. All right, so now one of the other things that I might do is I'll grab my selection tool, my rectangular selection tool, Marquee Tool, and we'll create one more new layer. We'll come on the end of this layer, or the end of this shape, and we'll just make a quick little rectangle on the end of it. And we're going to do the same effect. We're going to apply a gradient to it that looks like more like a metal bar. So let's pick one of the black and white ones, and let's try that. Yeah, up and down is better. But I don't like the way that one looks. Let's try one more. You can adjust your gradient, of course. You can also adjust the opacity of it. All right, let's try that one. There we go, that's better. All right, so now we got that nice little gradient bar on the end of it. We can deselect that, duplicate it, and use our move tool and move it on to the other side as well. So we can use those for as many of these as we want. And again, we're just messing around with the design. So your choice as to how you'd want that to look or font you'd want. Now, I said I'd do both. So we did the gradient. Now for the bottom one, we'll do the mask. And so I think that's this one. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to name that so we don't have to keep clicking. Gray. And we're going to name this one red. And silver stripe. All right. And we should have another one of those, silver stripe too. Once I get beyond a few layers, I got to name them, otherwise I'll go crazy. All right, so now we got our gray layer. We're going to go ahead and add a layer mask to that. And now that we got our layer mask, we're just going to go ahead and grab another gradient. This one's going to be a simpler one, just going from black to white. Because now what we can do is we can kind of fade that out a little bit from the bottom. More like that. So that will actually be transparent on top of the video, so that it basically fades out to whatever is playing underneath it on the actual video. All right, now these are also probably a little larger than I usually make them. As you can see, the lower third that we're really using is kind of really short. Lower thirds that are going to be permanently up the whole time, you usually want to make them small. Lower thirds are going to be up temporarily, like this one would be up temporarily, come up for a few seconds and then disappear. You probably want to make those short. I mean, you can make those bigger, it's okay. Now, next up, what do we want to do in terms of export? How do we make this so that it can be seen transparently by our live streaming software or video editing software? So you can do this a couple of ways. If your software supports Photoshop files, great. But even then, I tend to get better results when I save out or export out a PNG or PNG file instead. So I'm going to save this out. Yeah, this should save it over to my live streaming system over there. I'm going to save this out as Adobe Live, TW, and we're going to make it a PNG document. The PNG format will support transparency. That's why we're using it. JPEG will not. So if you make a JPEG, you're going to get a white background, even where you didn't make one. PNG will preserve the transparency. Older editing tools also use the Targa format, which we haven't used that in years. And of course, the PSD format, Photoshop file format, will also preserve the transparency. JPEG and things like it, GIFs, they're always going to have a white background. Well, GIFs could be transparent, but they're going to be low quality. So just use PNG. You'll be on the safe side. Click OK. I see that syncing. It has synced. So now, here I'm going to go ahead and let's save the document too. Call this lower third. Save it to my desktop just so I have it. I'm going to close that lower third for now. And I'm going to go ahead and choose it in my streaming software so you guys can see it in action. All right, so first of all, let's turn off the one we have. And now let's turn on or go create the new one. So a live demo of a lower third we just created, if all goes well. And I see it there. And there it is. All right, like I said, I'm below it. Hey, everybody. But there it is. There's our lower third that we just made on this stream. So that's why I said you tend to want to make them. And here, if I go back to my normal view, there we go. It's okay now that I'm normal size, the lower third doesn't look so small. But that's one of the ways you easily and quickly make a lower third that you wanted to make for your videos or your live streaming like I'm doing now. So see how it's got the nice transparent, it's got the gradients look great. The mask is masking my hand right there. It's kind of blending in nicely, not a hard edge, because we use that gradient with the mask at the very bottom on that gray layer. Nice type that's easy to read. You could even go bigger. And I was going to say uppercase versus lowercase. I usually do upper and lower for everything else, but for titles or lower thirds, uppercase tends to work better in most cases. We don't always follow that rule because it's not a rule, but it's totally up to you to, of course, decide what you want for yours. But I think that you'll find in most newscasts, most newscasts, you'll see them use uppercase for like everything. So again, it's totally up to you. Someone asked, what streaming software do I use? I use Wirecast Pro 7. Wirecast 7 Pro from Telestream. But this would work just as fine in OBS, which is free to download. All right, now, one last thing. So we're actually a little bit over time, but let me go back to Photoshop for one more second. Hi, I'm above them. I'm down here. Anyway, let's go back and open that up for one more second. I just want to point out something that you can do now that you've got your lower third built. Well, our lower thirds have been static because we built them in as static images in Photoshop, exported out of PNG. But, and here, let me turn this one off because it's driving me crazy now. All right, let's go back to the other one. All right. And see there, the upper and lowercase rule has been broken because I didn't design this one. But anyway, the person that designed this, Rufus, he hates uppercase type. So he designed an upper and lowercase. But anyway, we got our lower third there. Let's say we want our lower third to be animated or like fade in all the different pieces. Well, you could do that even from Photoshop. What you would do first is you would go in, and the easiest way to do this to get everything you need is to switch in your workspace, switch to the motion workspace. When you switch to the motion workspace, that will bring up the timeline. From the timeline, you can say, because this is a still image, create a video timeline. That will give you all of your frames, and here we can zoom out a little bit. That'll give you all of your, sorry, not all your frames, all your layers on individual layers of your timeline. And this is, of course, happening in time. So it's 5 seconds right now. By default, you can make the timeline longer or shorter. But it's 5 seconds that doesn't do anything because nothing's moving. So for example, I could say that, well, the first thing I want to appear is the gray bar. So I'm going to take everything else that's not the gray bar. I'm holding down my Command key, Control key on Windows, selecting all these other layers. And I'm going to move all those other layers out so that the gray bar is the first thing to appear. Then I could say that I want the red bar to appear next. So I'm going to select everything else that's not the red bar. I'm just doing this this way because I didn't lay these out one by one. Had I laid these out one by one with video in mind, I would have already put them in the way that I want. So I'm going to select everything that's not the red bar. We're going to move, and not the gray one either. We're going to move everything else over. So now if we were to play this right now, just making those two simple changes, the gray bar would appear and then everything else would appear on top of it. And if you wanted to take longer to appear, move it further over. And then it would build up each thing. You can also put in transitions. So for example, I can drop in for this gray bar, I can have it fade in with a transition. We can drag that right onto it. You can see I definitely did not move these over far enough. Let's go ahead and move some of this stuff over further. Let's move it at least to the end of the transition. And then we'll do another transition on top of the red one. And same thing. We'll select all of these layers and move them over further in the timeline. There we go. Oh, I always do that. I always select that one too. We don't want that one. There we go. And so now it would look like this. Gray bar fades on, red bar fades on, everything else pops on because we didn't do transitions for everything else. But you get the idea. You can actually have this build up or animate in over time. Once you've done that, how would you get this out to be a video? You can actually go up to your file menu. You could go out to export, render video. And this will render a video that you can then play either in your streaming software or in your video file that will animate the lower third to appear. And of course, you want to fade it out at the end so it disappears. But this would render out a video ready to go with everything you just did in Photoshop. So you've got your complete package here for how you'd want to make your, here I'm going to revert this back, how you want to make your lower third and even turn it into a real motion lower third with video capabilities in Photoshop as well. So your choice. All right, so with that said, everyone, thanks for watching. Went a little over the time I normally would do this in, but you get the idea. You can have a lot of fun creating some cool lower thirds that are designed completely from scratch, or you could use templates. You can use the stock templates that are there. By the way, I just want to try one of those out. Let's go back real quick. I just want to see what they look like. I haven't looked at one of those yet. So if you don't feel like designing one, then you could go into film and video when you do a new document, event lower third set. I'm going to go ahead and, you know what, maybe I can just preview it. Ah, that's what they look like. So they're really just the graphics. They don't have anything on them. So if you like them, you can go ahead and download them, and then they're yours to use from here on out. So if you don't feel like designing cool graphics, there's some cool graphics here for you that you can then pick apart and do whatever you want, because these will be layered files for you to use. All right, so with that said, everybody, thanks for watching. And if you want to see some other graphic design work going on this week, be sure to check out adobelive.com on the 8th and 9th of this week from 9 to 5 p.m. I think it's going to be Eastern time. And you can, here, I'll just let them tell you more about it. All right, so head over to adobelive.com June 8th and 9th from 9 to 5, and you can watch graphic design, tips, tutorials, and techniques all day long. Cheers, everybody. Catch you on the next one.